Why are gussets in female underwear always so far back? Why are they always either too wide or too narrow? These are the most common complaints that we received from the women when we asked them about underwear frustrations. If you're new here, welcome. This is episode number 2 of our mini underwear series. Here we'll teach you how to design and make made-to-measure knickers. My name is Lisa Bennett. I am co-founder of Studio Arkdefo, designer and educator. I want you to understand clothes making inside out, instead of just copying a ready pattern that wasn't made to fit you in the first place. This series was inspired by the lack of natural underwear for women in the general stores, and what was originally planned as a short quick tutorial turned into a complete knickers course, and we are publishing it in separate parts for free on YouTube, but you can sign up to the full course on our website. All the lessons are available immediately after sign up, and you will have lifetime access to the course. It's linked in the description. And in this video, I'll show you how to find your perfect gusset position and 3 ways to design and sew it. Make sure to watch part 1 to get the most out of this tutorial. I'll first show you how to make patterns and then we move to the stitching part. Many of you said in the comments when we ask you about the problems with underwear, it's the positioning of the gusset. That very often in ready-bought underwear it's really way too low and we want it higher. So what I did when I was making this test, I also marked it where I would like it for me, right? So it is pretty high, much higher than any ready-bought underwear. So what I'm doing, I'm marking this on my front pattern. This is where I would like it to be. There is a chance that this is too high. I will know after wearing this, but you can also lower it down. Real quick, just to make sure that we're on the same page. A gusset is this double layered detail at the crotch area of your underwear, in between your legs. Option number 1, I think most of my bought underwear will like this, is when a gusset sits unstitched on the front. It's like a little pocket inside your knickers. It's probably the least favorite option among women, but it's the easiest to make, which explains its popularity in ready-made underwear. It will repeat your front pattern precisely. Something like this. Yeah, this will be the center. You will be stitching it on the side together for the elastic for your underwear. And yes, this part is just usually left open, but of course you can also stitch it so it stays in place. And if you find the positioning of your gusset uncomfortable, if you want to go for this way, then you can adjust your patterns a little bit. So you can take your front and your back, align them, tape them together, and maybe you want to move the stitch over here. You absolutely can do this. So that's option number 1. Option number 2, which is much more pleasant to wear, you take your front and back pattern. I copy my back and front as the entire piece. Mark where is my gusset in the front, where I liked it. Front, back, and now I decide where my gusset ends on the back, for example here, make it bigger, make it more comfortable. And now this is my back pattern, this is my front pattern, and this over here is my gusset. Separate detail, which I will use in 2 layers, and I will hide the stitches for the back in between the layers and for the front in between the layers. So in this case, my underwear will consist of 4 pieces. So 1 front, 1 back, and 2 gussets. This is option number 2. And option number 3, you take your front of your underwear and you just make 2 pieces of the front and then 1 piece for the back. You hide the stitch again between the layers, and then you have front double layered. And this way you don't make a gusset as such, but a double front layer. For option number 1, I'll just use these tiny models, right? Front, back, and the gusset. How do you put them together? You go to the wrong side of the back, the wrong side of the front, yeah, and this is the right side of your gusset. So when you wear your underwear, you don't want the seam to be fillable. You don't want to feel it. You want it to be hidden. So how do we hide it? Very simple. Wrong side of the back, right? Then on top, I'm putting the gusset this way. So right side of the gusset goes to the back. And then like this, I also add the front. And I will stitch this, just a plain zigzag stitch this way. Yes, that's how it looks. Stitched. Now, if the seam allowance is too big, you just trim it And then you will need to iron this. I won't be doing this right now. I just want to show you the principle. So now here is the seam and your gusset is actually covering it. And now you have nice and comfortable seam as you're wearing it because all that bits are hidden. And I won't be finishing this little pair. If you were to do it this way, you would also zigzag stitch over here, the edge of the gusset to the edge of the front on each side. It will make your life easier when you add in the elastic. And you often see when it's underwear is done like this, they often don't stitch the top, so it looks like a pocket. And if you want to, you can absolutely zigzag stitch it over here so that it doesn't annoy you and doesn't poke out. But other than that, that's how you do gusset this way, the first option. And if you were to do the third option where you have double front, it will be exactly the same principle. The only difference that instead of this little gusset, you would have an entire front detail. You have the same idea. You have two front details, one back detail, and the seam will be hidden in between. And just in that case, you will need to zigzag this entire curve to connect two front details. That's it. That's the only difference. Okay, so that's options 1 and 3. And now I'll show you step by step how to do the second option. Second option with the gusset as two separate details is my personal favorite. But I do encourage you to try both first and third options for the sake of practice and to find out which one you like the best. So now I will copy my front gusset and back onto the new piece of paper. Why do I copy them at a distance from each other? Because I'll be adding seam allowance at every seam. The seams are between the back and the gusset, between the front and the gusset, and on the side seams for the back and front. I'm adding 1 centimeter. Again, if you want, you can add more for your convenience in sewing. We'll be cutting extra off anyway. The center line I just extend, and I need to tell you a few words about the curve here, so I don't finish the seam allowance on this side yet, and I'll make them very visible for you too. 1 centimeter everywhere. In my case, you decide on your size of seam allowance. Side seams and connection of front and back with the gusset. These are my seam allowances. Nothing on the center because I'll be cutting them on the fold. One more thing, when you're cutting the gusset, it's a great idea to mark where is the back, where is the front, so you don't mess it up and don't do it, vice versa. Now I just cut the straight lines and I'm gonna tell you a few words about seam allowances on the curves. There is one little detail I want you just to keep in mind. It's not super crucial for the knickers using jersey, stretchy fabrics. It won't be, a deal breaker. But I want you to understand something. Look, when I'm stitching, for example, back and the gusset, I will have 2 layers of the gusset and 1 layer of the back. So the layer of the back will be kind of hidden in between the layers of the gusset. That's why my seam will be invisible, because there basically will be 1 gusset on one side, 1 on the other. Stay with me, you'll see it in a moment. But what happens that this detail is going inside 2 of these details. It means that the seam allowance of the gusset here, it will be kind of folding onto itself. So look, the straight line goes this way, right? This is my seam allowance. And as I'm sewing it, this is my seam, and my seam allowance is going over here along this edge, along the curvy edge. If I cut it, fold it, same way as it will be folded, just the back for now, and then I open it, see, the edge of my gusset is doing this shape, pointy shape, because this will allow me to fold my seam allowance and to match precisely the shape of my curve of the gusset. But it's not crazy important in this case, because we'll be trimming, we'll be cutting this seam allowance almost to nothing. But it's better be safe than sorry. So on your pattern, you just fold your seam allowance along this edge towards the gusset. And what do we do on the back? We align our seams and we draw the line along here, because the back detail is going inside the gusset, right? So this will be the edge of the seam allowance on the back. I cut it out. And now I have my perfect shape. And I do the same on the front. It's also doing the pointy thing. So my gusset has a bit of a funny shape with the seam allowances. And now for the front, the same story. I take my pattern, align it, and this is where I cut for my seam allowance. So now my pattern is perfectly ready, all the seam allowances are in place, I don't need anything else, and I can cut it on the fabric and show you finally how to put the knickers together. I will be making the ugliest pair of knickers in the world because the back and the front will be two different fabrics in two different colors so that you can see clearly back and front, and both halves of the gusset, the outside and the inside, will be also two different colors for you to see every single step and understand exactly how this pair is coming together. One more thing I didn't cover because it's not as important when it comes to this kind of garments, but the grain direction will be in the center of the back, in the center of the front, and in the center of the gusset. Grain direction is not as crucial in jerseys as it would be in woven fabrics, especially in the case of underwear. And if you don't have a full cut of fabric but want to upcycle your old t-shirts instead, I wouldn't lose sleep over the grain direction. So for this ugly pair, the back will be green, the front will be white, and two parts of the gusset will be black and gray. It doesn't matter where you start, let's start with the back. And because all of these fabrics are the same color on right side, I will mark the right side with tape, that this gives you a little guidance. In jerseys it could be a bit tricky to see the right and the wrong side, but please don't worry, it's practically invisible, so if you mess it up it's not a big deal. You'll look really closely and you'll see the difference. The right side is a little bit shinier. Right side, gusset, and now I flip it this way, so right side is facing the right side, and I pin it. It's always good to start pinning from one side, then from the other side, and then in the middle you just flatten it, making sure that it's all aligned. Okay, so that's done. Now I'm going to the wrong side. And inside, when you're wearing this, actually you want the softer side to be closer to you. So in this case, I put my right side to the wrong side. Pin again, the same pins, and now all three layers together. And now I go to the sewing machine, and 1 centimeter away, as my seam allowance, I will put one stitch, and in this case it will be a zigzag stitch. We're using zigzag stitch instead of the straight stitch. But everything else is the same. I start and finish with a back stitch, just instead of the straight line it will be zigzag to prevent the seam from breaking. Very quick, if you don't know how to use a sewing machine, have no idea what is grain direction, seam allowance, and how to change a needle, sign up to our free sewing course. It's 100% free and you will have access for 60 days. And a gentle reminder, if you sign up to this underwear course on our website, you will get lifetime access to our free sewing course as a bonus. So I already have my stretch needle inserted, and now I'm choosing the zigzag program. When it comes to the stitch size, this is up to you. I wanted to make more or less the same, so equal size and kind of medium size. So I'll go for 2.5 and 2.5, or I could go for 3 and 3. If you're not sure, just test it on a piece of fabric. We have plenty of offcuts and they're great for testing. Visually, this is a great size of the stitch for the underwear. And the tension is also more or less medium. And I can actually start a little bit further down. It will be easier. A couple of stitches forward. And then I can remove the pin and a couple of back stitches. And then I just continue straight. When you sew in jersey, you don't pull it, you don't stretch it, you just let it be. You hold it before and after as any other fabric. You are in control, you make sure it doesn't go anywhere, but do not stretch it. And finish, of course, with the back stitch. And you're done. Here's your nice zigzag stitch. Again, I'm using ugly threads on each side so you can see all the differences, okay? And when I pull it, it does not break because zigzag allows for the stretch to happen. If you're curious, you can test it with a straight stitch and it will snip right away. And now I can chop all these threads off. I don't need them, as well as trim the seam allowance as I promised. So we don't need this, and I can just go as close as I can, leaving maybe 5 millimeters. Now we will need to iron this seam, but we don't have to do it right away. We can first stitch the front and then come back and iron both of them at the same time. That's where we are at. That's the back. That's a nice beautiful seam, hidden. Now I go to the front. If this is the right side of the front, I'm going to the wrong side. And here is the reason why I'm making everything in different colors, so you can truly see what I'm doing. So I am right now on the wrong side. Okay, so I take the outer gusset and the front and I pin them this way. On the right side, everything will look nice. Now how do I connect this bit to here to make it nice and clean? If you have ever made a shirt with a yoke, you might know this technique. If not, don't worry. So the idea is that I want to take this gusset and cover both my seams this way, so they're hidden. And now I can just go from the inside and I have access to all my 3 layers. So now I go to the side of the gusset, the inner one, and again the same. I pin all 3 layers together. It looks a little bit awkward because everything is twisted, but it's very simple to get it to the sewing machine. Same story here, 1 zigzag stitch, and then we continue with trimming the seam allowance and ironing. The exact same story here, and I trim off the excess seam allowance. Always make sure that there is nothing else under the layers. This is the biggest chance for mistake when you cut fabric underneath that you didn't want to cut. Yeah, and now look, so I get my front in, and now I have clean stitching here and here. I was sewing from here, and it doesn't matter, it could have been the back, could be the front, whatever. So the stitch is inside, and then here I have very clean seam on the front and same on the back. And I know many of you don't like the ironing stage, but this is essential. Look how wobbly this looks. It looks really not nice, not clean. You want to have it nice and flat, and to achieve this result, you need to iron this. You won't ever have to iron this pair of underwear again. I will remove this right wrong. Yeah, let's remember that black gusset is on the outside, gray is on the inside. Right, so first good news. Look how flat are the seams. What a difference from very quick, very simple ironing. Second, not so good news, but not a drama. My gusset is a little bit off. This happens when you work with jersey. So I cut one side a little bit wider than the other. Not a big deal. It might happen. It happens. It's very easily fixable. Get your scissors and correct it. When you're making an actual pair, you'll be most likely using the same color, so it won't even be as visible. It's only visible here because I'm using contrasting fabrics. Now the main work is done and we're ready to attach elastic, and this will be our final step. And I'll show you different ways how to add and sew elastic next time. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel. New content will be coming up every Friday. Meanwhile, what you could do is go through your existing underwear and have a close look. How is it made? How did they stitch the gusset? How is the elastic attached? Study your existing underwear and start gaining this understanding how different items are put together. And a kind reminder, our full underwear course is already available on our website. It comes with very handy, ready-to-print PDF instructions and a lifetime access to our free sewing course. You'll find all the information and links in the description below. Thank you for watching and see you next time.